Counselor Accents Podcast. Two school counselors who love their jobs. Oh, and they happen to have Southern accents too. Bless their hearts.
I'm Kim Crumbly,
I'm Laura Rankhorn.
and together we are Counselor Accents, two school counselors who are in the trenches with you.
We know what you're going through because we're living it every single day.
My friend, we
I
have a
miss
friend
you.
on today. I
Oh,
always miss you. I always miss you. I wasn't talking about you. I was talking about a friend that we're having on today.
I was thinking we've been apart for not even 24 hours. And so I was talking about how much I miss you.
Oh, I do. After we've been together laughing until we are passing out on the floor, laughing with tears rolling down our eyes.
I
And
love my
then
family, but nobody in this house
nobody
makes
in the
me do
world
that.
makes me laugh as hard as you make me laugh. And we could just look each other and laugh.
Oh,
It's the
the best.
best. It
Ugh.
is so the best because it's like we know what each other is thinking.
We have done some traveling and it's made you
Yeah.
excited. It's made me excited, but it's you especially because,
Because of the historical setting, we were
yeah,
at Tuskegee University and Tuskegee Institute in around Macon County in Alabama. Historically black college there with a lot of history.
yep,
And so that was what was really exciting. Laura and I work for C4C.
counselors for computing.
And also, our guest today, that's how we met him. Actually, yes, that is how we met him through the work that we do with that program.
Yep, and our dear friend Angela Cleveland connected us to him through
Yes, she
through
did.
that group. Yep.
And he did a podcast with us years ago.
Yep.
And we have him on again. We've got to know him and love him dearly. He's so funny. And we love him so much. But yes, we were in Tuskegee doing the kind of work that he does in Pennsylvania. What am I saying? He touches everybody. He's on the ASCA board. He touches all people, right? So anyway, I shouldn't say he touches all people like he's some perv touching all people. Okay. But we were at Tuskegee, and tell me what was your favorite thing that we did in Tuskegee?
Okay. Well, this is going to surprise anybody who's listened to us before, but because I don't know a lot about history, but you said, because you knew the history of Tuskegee, and you said, hey, there are like national park museums dedicated to the history of Tuskegee here on the campus. I think we need to tie them into our message. And I trust you to do these things because, like, I don't know, and you tied them together beautifully. So I think learning the history and revisiting some history of George Washington Carver and Henrietta Lacks. I mean, I was talking to my husband about it this morning, and I was like, do you know who George Washington Carver is? And he's a science teacher. So he was like, yeah, basically the inventor of everything. And I was like, okay, yes. And I was like, but do you know who Henrietta Lacks is? And he was like, yes. Have you read her book or read the book about her? And so I'm like, I can't
You're
scoop
so
anybody.
behind.
I'm
You're so
so
behind.
behind.
So, yes, we did visit Tuskegee, and I was just, I hate to, I mean, this is the birth of the Commodores here. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, this is where the Commodores uh came out of. So we had to sing, She's a Brick House. She's mighty, mighty, just let it all hang out.
If you don't stop singing, we're going to owe the Commodores money for that.
Okay, I'm gonna just that much, and
Okay.
that's all. So, I could go on and on because that is like Lionel Richie is, I want to say my boo, but I'm really past the age where that it doesn't sound, but he's older than me by quite a stretch. But anyway, Commodores, the Tuskegee Airmen, um, Rosa Parks was a student for a while there. The Booker T. Washington. We went to his home and tried to peek in, tried to break in, if you
Yeah.
will. And George Washington Carver. We did visit the Legacy Museum where we learned about more about Henrietta Lacks. And if you have not read that book, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, it's what really brought this to the forefront. And then the syphilis study. All this was so interesting, and we were able to tie a few of these things into AI and ethics and computational thinking and some things that we use in our career part of our school counseling. So we had a blast, but we did have an incident, and I will let Laura tell of said incident.
We were eating, and Kim, I don't mean to talk about you like you're not here, but you
When has that
exaggerate.
stopped you?
Right. You exaggerate quite a bit. And
Mm.
so I have learned that over our nearly a decade together,
Mm.
where you will carry on. If you've got an injury, you will carry on and cry and bellyache about it and act like you've got to go to the hospital when it's just a minor cut or bruise.
Right. I hear
I'm on
you.
the other end of the spectrum.
You are.
I won't complain about anything, and then I end up in the hospital for a week. But we
Yes,
won't get
yes.
back into that.
Mm.
So I don't usually bat an eye when you have an injury. So you made a big production as we were sitting there eating. You made a big production about biting your tongue. And I was like, okay. And you just kept on and kept on. And you were like, oh, it hurts. It hurts. And I didn't think anything about it until I look over and
It looks like the Carrie movie.
it was so bad. Blood is like coming out of your mouth like you are a vampire. I mean, it was bad.
I don't want to be graphic, but I couldn't swallow anymore. It was like it was bubbling wherever I hit this. I don't know how the tongue has veins. I don't know. I've bit my tongue before, but this was like
This was a laceration. I've never in my life seen anything like it.
I've never seen a tongue bleed like that.
I don't think we're doing it justice. I will say this, that when I looked at you, when I finally started paying attention to you in your struggle, I said, I think we're going to have to go to the emergency room. Like I truly thought that's where we were headed, was to the
We could
emergency room.
not get it to stop bleeding.
So I'm going, no, and I'm going to the drink machine to get you more ice to put on your tongue. And you're saying, I think if I just apply pressure. And
Yeah.
yeah. And
I kept wanting to talk and couldn't apply pressure because I kept wanting to talk.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I think my favorite moment was we left the restaurant because, we had
headed to the hospital,
we
possibly.
were going to drive around for a little bit and see where we needed to go and where the nearest hospital was. And we're in Auburn, Alabama, a cute college town with cute college kids.
College town people.
Yep. So we pull up to a red light, and you and I both sometimes think that we are still cute college people.
We're not.
We're not.
But we think that.
And so we pull up to this red light. We look over. There are two cute little college girls singing, dancing in their car. You look over and try to join in because it's what you do.
Yes.
And the problem is that you are applying pressure to your tongue. You've got a wad of, I'm sorry, but bloody napkin in your mouth hanging out. You look over and you're like fist pumping and like shaking and trying to join in, like, yeah. Meanwhile,
let's party. Yeah.
You've got blood pouring out of your mouth. You look like a vampire. Those girls probably went directly to the police department, as they should have, because you were so creepy looking.
It was bad. And so I want you now to know, I don't exaggerate. I just have these things happen to me.
Okay. Yeah.
But I
This is
did
not
talk
an
about this
exaggeration.
for a long time afterwards because I had a swollen tongue, which
You know
would
what?
make you laugh.
I'm going to put a little clip right here of you talking so that they can hear. Okay, Kim, I want you to explain what is happening right now.
Eating tacos at Taco Mama. I bit my tongue so bad that I have lost a lot of blood. So they probably are taking me on it. It's crippling.
On the bright side, we're going to Burlington. On the bright side, I'm going to get some peace and quiet. Okay.
Of course you have a clip.
Of course I do. Yeah. So,
goodness. Without further ado, I don't know why he even acts like he wants to hang around with us. Why Stephen Sharp would even want to be on our podcast. We're
I know.
ridiculous.
I know. But we are so honored and excited that he is joining us today. And he's got a new book to talk about. So I'm very excited about talking about that today. And so let's dive in. How excited, on a scale of 1 to 10, Kim, how excited are you right now?
Anytime that I am with Steve Sharp, it is immeasurable. It's past 10. I love this guy so much. Who does not love
Who
him?
doesn't? Right.
He's a superstar.
Yep. I was going to say that if you have been a counselor for longer than 10 minutes, then our guest today needs no introduction because he is like the face of school counseling. Would you agree?
Oh
Okay.
my goodness. If you don't have this on, if you're not watching this, he's making this all horrific face. But okay, yes, we'll go with that.
School counseling is, honestly.
I'm
One
so
of the
excited to be with
sweetest,
you.
most precious people we know, Steve Sharp.
Yeah.
It's always great to see you all. It's great to connect. So I'm just happy to be here. It's been a journey for us to all get here, but I'm happy we could make it here together.
And we will talk about this before this is over. But I have to say, while we were just chatting before we got started with the podcast, Steve just casually said, "Oh, they have just dropped my latest book into Amazon." I mean, how many people do we get to talk to that's just while you're talking, the book is dropping?
I know. And so casually he says it like, where you and I would be like, I don't know, getting.
We would have our mamas, daddies, uncles, and all around
Betty.
like for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I just birthed a child. I was just happy to see it was out, but now I'm
That's what I'm saying. I mean, like a little bit more, Steve, but
Yeah.
you know, you're kind of used to it now because this is your third book,
Yeah.
correct?
I'm 3. I'm playing zone for all my little kids now.
Yeah. And so today we're gonna talk about your second book. But before we talk about your second book in the process, because obviously you are now a legit author, give us just a synopsis of the because we're going to come back to the third one because I had chill bumps when I saw this. But talk to us about your first and a third books, just a synopsis of those two.
Yeah, I mean, like what I love about is like what I really like about is like I like that to have really like friends and colleagues like you to be with me along these journeys is always something that makes it just so rewarding for me. Like when I write the books, they're really just there are these big ideas and these big concepts that I've been working with other school counselors. I've been working with my students about, and it just gets to a point where it's like maybe we should just package this in a different way, just so we can share more of it with more people than at the bar and late night conversations or in consult calls as we're driving to and from work and stuff like that. So that's where a lot of this comes from. And so, yeah, it started with the Tech Tools book. And like, again, I was happy to share that and talk to you about way back in the day. And then, like we've had a chance even to kind of share and talk about that work. And like a lot of that work, when we talk about the tools of really like creating and designing, it's not just for digital stuff, it's for the real lives of our students. I know we talk about that before in our separate work, let alone sometimes when we've been together. And then really the true realization of it is in like the suicide prevention work that I do. I'm fortunate enough to do it with a great partner here in PA, Dr. Perry Rosen, and we've been doing it for over a decade. And so we captured all those thoughts and ideas into a book, which I'll happily share. Maybe I'll even, if you're okay with me tapping on some keys, I'll even give you maybe the first part of the book, just for you, your readers. Or your
That
listeners.
would be a bonus. The name of that new
Exclusive
book
content.
is Zero. To give us the name of the book again.
The book is called Lives Worth Living, the Zero Suicide Approach to Suicide Prevention in Schools. And that really captures a lot of when we talk about like the most relevant suicide prevention, evidence-based research when it comes to not just saving lives, but transforming lives. I'm really excited talking about it. And all those core concepts, though, when we talk about how we got to that place, you're going to find those in Redesigning Schools to Be Antiracist. I really, when we talk about it, those are kind of like The summation of the work that I do as a school counselor, really can be found in those two pieces of work, whether it be directly with my students, whether it be through state and national leadership, whether it be trying to design something that doesn't exist or improving the stuff that's there for our students and impacting their outcomes on a daily basis. These are really the two different pieces of it. And so I'm just, again, it's one of those things like some of this might sound new. A lot of it I don't think will, because you've heard these and we share these in different ways, but applying those in practical ways in the way that we can focus to really change systems and improve the outcomes in life for students, that's
Mm.
something I'm so excited about.
It's exciting just hearing you talk about it, because I feel like you give hope. You give, even in hearing you talk in these situations, like, and I love that collaboration piece that you're talking about. I think we as school counselors need to remember. Laura do, and I do a lot of that. We like to talk the talk and talk to other counselors and pull out. And there's, if you're not doing that, find other school counselors to talk about what's on your mind and to collaborate with. You don't have to write a book like Steve Sharp did. Steve, before we get going on the process, because I know Laura and I were talking about we want to know more about this process, but of how you this came to be. But tell our listeners where you're at, what your school looks like, all those things, and a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I'm Steve Sharp. I mean, like, as much as I may lead different state or national counseling organizations or lead state and national projects, like, the reality is I'm a school counselor. I was in my office last week. I am happily having business on top of mesh shorts down below right now because I'm trying to find myself back into summer mode. And then in addition to that, I'm a middle school counselor. I've run our department for a period of time. I work with students. I'm lucky enough to have a school of about 500 and a ratio about 260, which helps me to talk about why we should create transformative environments to the benefit of all of our students. All of our students deserve a school counselor. And then in addition to that, like, my school is suburban, but when I talk about suburban, the reality is that we go all the way into Lancaster City and the most rural parts of Pennsylvania all at the same time. So it's a nice little ecosystem where I get to do a lot of different targeted work with different populations. And it makes me happy to be a school counselor. I think it is those chances where when I'm working with other school counselors, talking about the work that we're doing, is that, like, we all have these different snapshots that can be these different lenses into the work that we do.
You know,
Laura, we're in the trenches. We're in the
okay, that's
trenches.
what I was
That's what
about
we
to
say.
say. Before we move forward, I just want to say, Steve, how much I admire you, and I know I can speak for Kim too, that you are in the trenches. You know, we talk a lot about that. In fact, I was just talking to my principal about this, that it's one thing to hear from experts in the field, but it is another to hear from experts in the field who are truly in the trenches doing the work. And what I love about you, Steve, is that you see a need and you don't just talk about the need, you figure out how to find the solution. You work with other people to find a solution to that need. And then you go beyond that, even. And like, you're representing us at ASCA. Like, I'm just so proud of the work that you do. And it's so commendable. And so I want our listeners to know that, you know, you're talking the talk, you're walking the walk, you're doing the work. And we're so grateful for that.
Are
Yeah,
you crying, Laura? Are you
I
crying?
could work up a tear.
I
I'm
felt like
missing out
we
myself
were
right
almost there.
now. I'm doing vapors waves right now. Yeah, it really is, like, I think, like, just the fun part about this book is I think, like, the book and kind of the story about it really is so instrumental in my own leadership journey, but it really goes back to, like, those relationships and collaboration. And, like, I was in a grad class just kind of talking about school counseling and stuff like that, and it was after the death of Eric Gardner, the I Can't Breathe stuff, and one of the students was like, "Can we talk to you more about race in schools?" And I was like, "Yeah," and we started talking about, like, talking about race and racism in schools and dealing with, like, the impacts of it is something that, like, students deal with a lot, but they don't actually, like, whoever really talks about race and racism. And the answer is, like, actually very little to none. Like, but there have to be supports out there. There have to be programs out there to talk about, like, race and racism to kind of just define it and give them space to kind of process it, right? And the answer was, well, no, and we started doing the work. So it was me and four amazing grad students, and we started doing the three amazing grad students. We started doing the work, and we started looking and doing the research, and it was like local programs, it was state level, it was national programs, it was all the way up to the White House Initiative for Educational Excellence for African Americans. These were all of our collaborators in the research kind of talking about this work. And the answer was, well, like we talk about different ways like race or racism impacts students, and there'd be great programs for it, but we were finding relatively few that were talking about like what it is or having definitions and stuff like that. So we create a program, and the secret of it is it was actually just kind of felt like a comprehensive school counseling program just through the lens of like race and racism. So we started talking about this new it wasn't a new concept, but we started teaching this concept called anti-racism. It was kind of interesting because this was in 2015. It was before stamped from the beginning how to be anti-racism, like George Floyd is alive and well and all these different things. And we're providing this program for about 150 students. But we weren't taking just to do a program. We were trying to take a design process to it. So the goals were to do a pilot, a proof of concept, to do a replication, to do independent replications, to collect data on the way to see if it was effective. And what we started to find out was it was highly effective. And it wasn't highly effective as far as like indoctrinating children. It was highly effective in saying like students were having a better experience talking about these things. Students were able to better explore their own identity, build relationships better with other students, feel comfortable in their school environments and make positive impact on their school environments. And we're like, wow, this is actually great and transformative. And we continue to sow those work and those lessons, whether it be in curricular design, whether it be in policy writing, whether it be in direct work with students or our own self-work and facilitation. We kept on trying to work and improve those processes, and it kind of grew from there. So like our work when we talk about what am I going to do with this, I'm not sure. Like I was in Boulder and I'm for a counselor for computing thing. And we're walking around Google offices and we're just zooming in and out and watching all the cool climbing walls and the coffee shops and the eateries. And we're talking to these great Googlers in the dining hall, well, in the food, like having 4-star restaurant. I'm going to say it's going to sound cliche, but Google cafeteria cookies. The answer is yes. They're great.
Okay.
Okay.
Just so
Oh,
you know.
I was there.
If
Go
you
ahead.
take nothing else from this, that's what you can take.
Yeah, but it was like one of those things like, and you see it, you have been there. The
Mhm.
one thing you don't see a lot of though is computers. Like you don't. You see places to meet, to collaborate, to draw and share and write on walls and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And like, but not a lot of computers. So like, and it's funny because like at that point we had been doing counselors for computing for about 2 or 3 years
Mhm.
and talking about this process, but like really being there and seeing it at the highest level, the answer is like designing things that can like look out from outer space and go down to your backyard, or looking at these things that I carry around with me every day, answers the questions of life. It's not necessarily the computer,
Yeah.
us. It's the
Right.
design, it's the process. And could we help our students, like we're doing in really difficult areas, to be transformative? Could we apply those same principles to be transformative? The answer is yeah. And like the more that I started to go down this rabbit hole, the more like we started to like see this very common thing that I think that we talk about a little bit, but I decided to just jump into the deep end is that systems are things and people are people and they're two separate things. And we often will personify systems and dehumanize people. But if we really get those two lessons kind of sound and start looking at like what systems are, the reality is our digital systems of our phones, our apps, all those different things, they're designed off of the real world systems that we created and work with. And none of us bump up when our phone updates overnight or stuff like that. So can we just use the same tools to transform the other systems that we work with? And that's how I got to redesign schools to be anti-racist. And we just went from there.
That is amazing.
I try not to talk so much because I will be a talker. I got so excited, Laura, because I've seen Steve's mind work this way before. He'll take one idea and say, could it not apply to this? And that you took,
Mhm.
I remember that Boulder trip, but how your mind came back with these thoughts and in your collaboration with your other, to make that systems approach work with I mean, it's just how your brain works, and I want you to kind of dumb that down a little bit more for like how this process worked for you. Go ahead, Laura. I know I jumped ahead of you.
No, you're good.
No, I can answer that in a really easy way. Like right now, like I'm in my house right now, and like I started thinking about like because um, with the Tech Tools book, our biggest goal with the Tech Tools book was to take the highly technical and just make it conversational. And so there's like a lot of nerd space that I absorbed in like some computer science jargon that helped me talk about kids when it comes to transforming their futures as far as accessing careers in computing and the value of it and kind of the experiences that they can have. There's one like when we talk about like how you're on your phone, I'm on my computer, you're on your computer, but maybe it's an iPad. Who knows? Maybe we're all on cups and strings. I don't know. And like that part is called like API, and there's or more so something called object reference. And like what object reference is, which I really want, it's gonna sound like, but it's the house. Like my house exists in the physical space I'm existing in right now. My house exists also as an address that you can look up in the 20th century in a phone book, or like just going white pages or something like that. My house also exists as a blueprint. My house also exists as a deed. And all these different things are the same way that we will reference one specific object, in this case, a house. Such is the case when you really start thinking about it, because we have been teaching about it in different ways. Such is the case for race. Like race, is it blackness? Race, is it the color of my skin? Race, is it where I grew up? Race, is it how has race been defined? And if like a house can be coded and encoded in the real world through many different ways. If I know my house, as we're watching it from Boulder, going in and out from outer space, is being coded in pictures and codes and pixels, it's being encoded that way. In the same way, in what different ways is race really being coded? And if we deconstruct that, what do we have left? Where did this actually start? And so, like, that's where I started with the book, is I deconstructed race. Like for a while, we call one of the working titles for the book was for a while was reverse engineering racism, because it was kind of the same concept. And the first thing we did, we start with race, and like was a product of race. Well, like if we started to deconstruct that, we went all the way back to the earliest definitions of race before there was a United States, before like where did race exist? And like a race exist in like blood laws, but what does that even mean? Race exists in ways of identifying who is going to be servants and who is going to be citizens. That has a lot of pattern to it. Race is who has access to guns, who has access to leave the property without permission. These are the things that, like, when I started to go through, like, I didn't just want to say these things exist. A lot of the presentations and talks was like these things exist. I gave everything to everyone in the book. Everyone can come to their own decisions. We actually planted the exact definitions to ancient, colonial, pre-colonial. All these different things exist, and what you see is like race was constructed, it was reconstructed and redefined over decades, over centuries, and redefined again. And so like it's these preferred and continually redefined sets of biological preferences that has some sort of social impact, whether it be things like access to law, access to equal protection of the law, access to houses, access to education, access to freedom, and all these different things. And it keeps on being defined and redefined. At the same time that this thing is evolving, something else is evolving at the same time. Well, two things really. It's like our ideals for our nation and this nation being built up, and also this separate thing called education. And so like I track these three things, and we all go on a nice journey all together from really like the 1400s onward up to present day, talking about like different ways that these have been presented and represented, and you get to see a lot of different things. it's not consistent, and like the outcomes are actually kind of sometimes capricious in nature, or sometimes they're actually for things like power or opportunity, or sometimes they're just frankly laziness that create unforeseen outcomes that have really damaging effect on people. And the reality is, like, going back to what we were talking about before, like what we understand is, like, fundamentally, if you're believing in people, if you believe like humans are fallible but great, or miserable, or kind, or cruel, like, that's not something that necessarily changes over time. And people work with the tools that they have. And that means, like, people had the chance to make just decisions, but they didn't. People had the chance to promote freedom, and they didn't. And like, we are just as susceptible of doing those things today as we were in the 60s or in the early 1900s. And what were the tools that they were using at that point? Do they seem that illogical if you actually look at the source language and put everything in context, and not like a day running past it in your history class in fourth grade? Like, what does it actually speak to? And so, like, I try and give that to all the readers before we start asking some of the questions, or as far as looking at today, because we all have some of these basic understanding and knowledge for this context. Like when we started doing our leadership summits, our anti-racism program, we didn't focus on race just because, like, we focused on race for the face value that was important, but also it was an excellent teaching tool to talk about these systemic factors and patterns that happen both for race or gender or sexuality or religion or all these different ways. It's just a very clear and evident and visible teaching tool in addition to that. And so we start talking about these in different ways, because a lot of people know what the Civil War is. A lot of people know what, like, Jim Crow is. A lot of people know about World War II and stuff like that. So we had, and the Civil Rights Movement. So we have some of these common characters and themes. So it became an excellent teaching tool to teach about these bigger concepts, which are that, like, the reality is people sometimes will create system to cleave power for themselves. And those ripple effects can be very challenging for everyone else. And these are things that are rules and laws that can change. And sometimes what we find is when they change, is they don't lead to the end of society. They lead to just something different. And this could be better. Sometimes it's just different. And like, how do we continue to redefine these things, and how do we actually create change? That's really the purpose of the book. And like, unlike other anti-racist books, a lot of anti-racist books, I like the content, but I don't like them because they don't actually talk about creating something different. They just re-describe racial trauma, or re-describe trauma, or some challenging stories. And so, like, the first third of the book is just deconstructing what race and racism has appeared in the laws, just so we can understand, see the patterns of how the things are created, so that we can talk about what we can do to change from there. And like that, those parts, those get to be the more interesting parts from there.
Well, that's something that I really appreciate about this book. Kim loves history. I have struggled with history, and you lay it out there. I have learned more from your book and the historical facts that you've put out there than I did probably in all of my years of growing up and learning history. And so the foundation of your book is so very strong, uh, because, you know, you really took time and put the work into, like you said, the first third of it is history. And I mean, you lay it out there, and I appreciate that about this.
No, I appreciate it too. My mom was like, Stephen, you wrote it in a way that even old ladies like me can read it. I was like, Mom, you're literate. It's fine. Like, we all have fine, you know. But like, the one part that I didn't like, that I didn't spend a lot of time with, which I is part of the storytelling, is talking about like these systemic pieces. So like, there's I went down a really big nerd rabbit hole, but realized it was just a space that I would have to happily live in. But was it possibly for the rest of us? Talking about the history of like things like engineering and computational design, because it's actually, as much as it sounds different, that's the secret, and that's the punchline, at least in my head, is like they're actually really a lot closer than you think. And so like, there's this guy, and I talk about it a little bit in the end of the book, even though like there's a lot in my mind I want to share. And it was just like, there's this guy, his name's Jay Forrester. He does this he creates the first digital computer. So like the first digital computers he uses to create is to do things to help us to win the war, to use radar to track missiles so that we can, and it's great and it's innovative. And he takes all this information and he's like, if I could do this with computers, I think I could do this with like human systems to help people make money. And so he goes to the MIT Sloan School of Business and starts creating what's called system dynamics, which is creating really using the same systems theory that helps us create digital computers and applying them in real world, but in this case to create things like IBM and General Motors so that they can become these multi-million dollar companies. And the secret is it's highly successful. But he's doing this for like decades. And it's like, I think I could do this actually to help to fix the world. And this is where we get to, and gets to a place where he creates books like Urban Dynamics, talking about like the common problems that come to urban systems and how we can solve those, to also things like climate change and global warming. And that's where a lot of this work does too. And like the reality is, our tools that create digital systems can create real world material change for both fortune and gain, but also to really substantially change the lives of people. And there are just a lot of different things. And is again, if we start like more often we'll choose to blame our systemic problems often on people. And can you see systems and can you see people? And because like the reality is it's going to be a lot easier to change systems than it is to change people in the end. And so that's where kind of the language and the work went from there then. And just the punchline of the joke is I think education is a really great place to do a lot of this work.
And that component of putting that from an educational lens, was there anything that was surprising to you or was kind of your aha moment as the process of this book
Yeah,
worked its way through?
yeah. So like we're really talking to like my editor before we even got to this point, let alone now. And it's kind of reflective. I think we're going to talk about Lives Worth Living a little bit later on. And it's one of those things that I was just on a call with some dear friends about a secret project I can't talk about quite yet. Um, but it's the same thing we talk about here. And it's why I can talk on as a national level. I don't believe that school counseling is a part of education. I think school counseling is reflective of a lot of the best parts of education.
Hmm.
Don't really talk like this as much. This is not a school counseling book. It's a book for educational leaders because I think educational leaders are in a transformative role. And so like that was a big talk I had with my editor was just like, Steve, this isn't really a school counseling book. It's a good book, but you understand it's not a school counseling book. I was like, but that's the point as far as school counselors. Like our work for our students happens in schools, and our schools are one of our best tools to create transformative change for our students. But our aspirations for students don't stop at the walls. Like our aspirations for students don't stop on graduation day. Like our aspiration for our students and what we want from them is out there. And it's like having quality access, quality opportunity. Like there's a fun place that is a turn in the book. And it was really built out some of the work happening here in Pennsylvania, reflective nationally. And I talk about what is opportunity. That is a really big piece of it. I feel for myself that school counselors are uniquely positioned to be opportunity engines. Like there was a great so I take some time breaking down something called the opportunity dashboard, which is really talking about educational opportunity. And educational opportunity can be broken down into a lot of different areas. It can be like academic access and rigor and quality, college and career access, and then in addition to that, like climate and culture. And fundamentally, at the end of the day, I strongly believe in what has me coming back and why I is that school counselors are the only profession, let alone the only ones working in school that have high quality training and regular access to kids in those specific areas. And that's how we define the quality of our schools. That's how we define the quality of outcomes is through this concept of opportunity. And if we really embrace that, and if we really start understanding the work that we do as opportunity engines, we can do a lot of transformative things. Like the same idea and same concept of not just transforming, like not just believing that our schools are there to educate students, but to create really systemic opportunity for our students is one of the fundamental concepts for lives worth living, of how we talk about not just saving lives, but helping our students to lead lives worth living. And that's something that we can talk about in just a little bit, but like that's one of the core pieces of it. Is like if we start, like, a lot of our history is steeped in people in the misbelief that they were often facing scarcity, and that they needed to have other people do the work for them so they could have enough money, or that they needed to appease the system because they were afraid of the uncertainty of change, or they needed these systems to exist because I didn't want my standing in society to be diminished because I might be a step closer to scarcity. And the answer is that I just don't believe any of that was true. And at the same point, like if we were talking about really building systemic opportunity, building a way where we are not all trying to be a step away from getting by, but all working together to thrive, I think there's something really to be said about that. And there's a lot of powerful examples of how that can change. And if we can build those systems around. So like some of the stuff is also talking about, it's like the stuff that I know, like, uh, is like creating a design process is not like, you don't have to go to MIT to do that. You don't have to sit in a witty and trendy webinar talking about like tech tools and stuff like that. It's something we can do in our day-to-day lives. Like it was really cool. I think about it, it was not this past May, but the May before, one of my students came back from graduation just to say hi. And it's great. I work in middle school, so it's always great when these adults come back. So I want to call timeout, and this is to all the school counselors out there that work in the middle or elementary school level. Take some time to train your students. Train them that they are always welcome back to say hi, but they must introduce themselves and not say, "Do you know me?" Because we will be in our same middle age or older bodies, and they'll come back in adult bodies with different voices, wearing all the same outfits, saying, "Do you remember me?" And the answer is maybe, but we stripped away context. And again, the purpose of this book and everything else is context is important. So just work with them to introduce themselves when they come back. But anyway, this young man had come back, and the reality is, like, he had graduated early and was working at a startup, doing tech startup. And we had done like a little coding and stuff on the side. But the reality is, you don't need to be a computer scientist to apply these skills. You frankly could just be out of high school for a few weeks and be applying these skills.
Yeah.
And the reality is, like, these skills and tools aren't about creating apps. These are about improving the quality of lives of the people that we have to face every day. It's
Mm.
about changing the quality of lives of, frankly, children that we've made a commitment to.
Mm.
If you believe those things, like, we can talk about, like, the reality is, just plainly, one of the most common predictors is race and racism in America when it comes to the educational outcome of children.
Mm. I feel
And
like we've heard a keynote. I was getting chill bumps when he called us opportunity engineers.
Oh,
That
I
was
know.
brilliant. And Steve, it's just like you take it's almost like I see this weaving, all these patterns we that are woven together, all your aspects, your school counselor, your work with NC WIT and C4C, um, your your computer design, all of these elements you weave together in all of your work. It's like nothing is, it
That's
just, you use everything to put, and it sounds like you've done that with your new book too, which we are going to do a podcast on because we, I had chill bumps reading about this new book. It doesn't sound like you let anything waste. You put it all in that brain of yours and it just kind of, it make it weave almost like a recipe for your work.
you're right, Kim. I am, in fact, a one-trick pony.
That's it. I didn't know how else to say it, Steve.
Nope.
No,
No, but
I
the
think
reality
it's
is, like,
actually brilliant. I think it's brilliant.
the reality is, though, there are a couple different things. Like, and the one I really like, I'm humbled that you say that, but it's not like what I tried to really what I tried to acknowledge and to reflect is, like, my work is really a celebration, the work of, frankly, school counseling graduate students who are amazing school counselors now. Like my work is reflective of like dozens of community members and volunteers doing this work now. Like it's for parents, it's for teachers, and 100% is for the students who showed up and did the actual work. Like I'm just fortunate enough that I got to have a front row seat and capture these things and be able to have the unique opportunity to see patterns and talk about in different ways that I think that they work and how other people can make them work. And like
Mm.
the one part that like I am gonna not as a deflection, but just to be clear, like it's not a point of brilliance. I am a school counselor doing the work like you and everyone else here on this call. We can do this work. Like the capacity piece isn't like, and we talked about that before. We talked about like when we talk about tech tools, but the capacity piece isn't necessarily in like some sort of like innate ability or God-given thing. Like in some different ways, that actually lends itself to the same situations where we're saying that like biology and ability is going to pre-describe the outcomes. It's not. Like the reality is like the thing that I know that I'm happy to do is like I'm not afraid to laugh at myself or to try something and make mistakes and then try it differently the next time. And so like that piece, that design aspect, that's something that is interwoven from like some of the first conversations we had that I know that we have done like trainings together and stuff like that is design takes risk. But the risk that
Mhm.
you and I absorb and do is going to be far less than what our students face on a daily basis, whether they're aware of it or not. And I got it to just kind of take a step and reflect that a little bit more because like I know I've kind of been doing the rounds about this book and some other stuff. And like, even in my highest levels of conversation with educational leaders right now, there's a real conversation. There are parts of education that seem very scary these days. But the reality is, even when it's feeling scary, like the amount of risk that we absorb or that we feel like we're facing is still only a portion of the actual real risk that our students face on a daily basis, even if
Mm.
they don't have words to describe it or if they're aware of it. And so, like, the question is, like, I am I am not by any means trying to diminish like the real concerns and threats that happen from state to state that are happening in different levels. Like I'm not trying to diminish that. I am creating an illustration though. Like we didn't sign up to be firefighters, but firefighters choose to absorb those risks for not just the well-being of other people, but also for people's property sometimes for things. Because we
Mm.
understand those can have some deep meanings and also have some deep outcomes for other people. For a lot of us, this might be us reassessing why we're in education or what we're in education for, or what are the tools to do so, particularly as we've seen the fracture of like federal guidance happening at the national level when it comes to the work that we do with students. The reality is, my book, I feel, becomes more important because our ability to intentionally design, measure the outcome, and redesign the tools that we do becomes so much more important because the work we do on the local level has now expanded by magnitudes as far as the outcome of our kids. And like that doesn't mean at the end, like we can't have bad days. It doesn't mean like we still can't be human. What it's saying is again, like we need to evaluate roles and we might be stepping into roles that we're more aware of the risks that we care sometimes, but that still is pales in comparison to our students.
Mm.
I want to make sure, just frankly, seeing this coming from for a while now, that everyone has the tools that they need to be successful for their students to be the best versions of themselves. And that's why I was hoping to do redesign schools to be anti-racist.
Where can our school counselors get this book?
You can get on Corwin website. It also is available on Amazon, though I prefer Corwin, but follow your hearts on that one. It is nice because, like, again, like this book caught fire when it first came out, and it was again not being a school counselor's book, but school counselors being educational leaders. It was in the top 250 of all education books.
Wow.
So, like, I do think like we are uniquely positioned to be transformative in like these very challenging times in education. When education is changing, the one part that I wrote it in the end of the book. I am good. I kind of write it here too. Is like I'm not trying to diminish some of the underlying concerns or fears or questions that people are having in education 2025 and beyond. But at the same point, I also am not going to spend a lot of time lamenting what is lost, and I'm going to challenge both myself and the listeners here to also use those energies to just design something better. Like the
Hmm.
reality is that our students, our nation, our education have faced a lot of challenging times. And like we have survived those times and built things that have created great opportunity. And where I just lament a lot of some of the losses that have happened recently, it still doesn't mean we can't build something better to move forward with, but it's going to take work. And
I
hopefully,
appreciate your strength. Yeah, I appreciate your strength and your wisdom and your voice of hope. We appreciate that so much. Um, I know Laura's at work, but I have a quick question. How is your tech book doing? Thing seems to just continue to be so relevant. I mean, how do you write a tech book and it stay current? What and are you thinking about doing another one, Steve?
I am taking a break from writing for a little bit for my own sanity, but
Hmm, hmm.
are we going to revisit the tech book or something like that? The answer is maybe. Um, I know the technology has continued to expand. I think there's a lot we could talk about as far as like generative AI, its applications for improving outcomes for school counselors. I do like that when it was, I think, last conference, some woman came up and was like, I know you. I was in your tech session in Austin. You were talking about this AI stuff before ChatGPT ever came out. I know. Thanks.
I don't know if you were doing a Southern accent, but it almost sounded like that. Was it
No,
us? Was it us?
It
all
happened.
my accents are pretty much the same.
I gotcha.
But with that being said, yeah, I think there's going to be more work coming in the future. Clearly, there's a call for it. I do have, like just was here with friends. Why don't I talk about kind of the next piece of it? And so, like, redesigning schools be anti-racist is really a how-to on designing, analyzing, designing, and redesigning systems. And we talk about like where that is reflected in my personal work is in the suicide prevention work. So, like, I do have a book coming out in November called Lives Worth Living: The Zero Suicide Approach to Suicide Prevention. And because I'm with you all right now, I'm just going to give you just the first parts of the book.
Thank you.
That's
That's
you.
exciting.
A spark took nearly 100 children's lives and changed everything. In 1958, a fire burned its way through elementary schools in Chicago, Our Lady of Angels. Following the deaths of nearly 100 students and staff, there was mourning and recovery. What also followed were sweeping changes for both public and private schools. The sweeping policies and practices gave rise to commitments of safety. Fire protection emerged not simply from hoses and extinguishers, but layers of safety monitoring, inspection, procedures, invisibly integrated fire safety into nearly every building's culture. Last year, no students died in school fires. No flames touched their bodies. Smoke seldom ever kissed their skin. If a fire alarm rang through the hall, students and staff walked out of their classrooms orderly, likely to a nearby parking lot. As the building was checked, students were accounted for, and the school routine was reestablished. Despite nearly 3,400 school property fires in the most recent data, there have been no deaths in school fires. In 2021, the most recent data, students wouldn't die by fire. They'd be far more likely to die by their own hand. According to national data, there's a greater than a 60% increase in suicide deaths for youth ages 10 through 24 in the decade between 2007 to 2021. The suicide rate from 10 to 14 tripled in that same window, and nearly 600 student deaths in 2021. A whole school building and its students essentially disappeared, not due to flames, but due to suicide. Despite the alarming rising numbers, the reality of lived experience of students, the challenge and change to curb suicide deaths might feel as far-reaching as ending deaths due to school fires did in 1950. The spark that led to change was simply a national commitment. No more children would die in a school fire. We can commit now to building a culture where no children need to die by suicide. The simple commitment has emerged through behavioral health as an aspirational goal. There will be zero suicides. And so we talk about it. We talk about that behavioral health model. We break it down. We adapt it for schools, and we incorporate not just what we think would be best, but the most evidence-based research of actually what works. And so I'm really excited about this work. And the reality is that if we are spending our time and energy trying to save lives, we're going to continue to fail. We are changing our energy to transforming systems, to helping our students not just to save their lives, but to lead lives worth living. That's where we can have a new number, and that number might be 0. So again, like I'm really excited about redesigning schools to be anti-racist. I think a lot of the tools and the work and the structures, you can find a lot of that there, particularly in these times when we're wondering what's next or what can I do. I think it's a very powerful tool. And we're talking about, again, helping our students not just to live, but to lead lives worth living. I'm so very excited about this book to come.
Kim, I watched you lose consciousness as he was speaking. I watched it happen. Such a mic drop moment. And like Steve, you don't even realize, I don't think, how profound your words are. And it makes me want to just start right now. I mean, you make it so tangible and like something that I can do. When we look at these things overall, it can feel very hopeless and you don't know where to start. But when I talk to you, I feel like, okay, yes, we can do this. And I think that's so valuable for school counselors, but like you said, educational leaders, when these situations and these heavy situations hang over us, but you make it possible. And just that's such a gift that you're giving us.
I appreciate it. I humble by it's the same gift we give our kids. Like the reality is, like our kids are always felt with things that seem like impossible, and we tell them how to take steps and to see in the long game and to build a plan from there. For things when it comes to understanding how race was constructed and how we can build anti-racist systems, hopefully I provide some starting tools for you when it comes to hopefully transforming our lives for students in the lines of like suicide prevention. We have some tools coming out soon. And when it comes to having fun and entertaining ways to learn about tech tools to transform your own practice, that's been out for a while now. And
Feel relevant.
yeah, all these things to say again. Like the parts that I can say are easy takeaways, particularly in like these kinds of educational systems, is our relationships matter. I very much celebrate a chance to spend time calling and texting through very crazy circumstances to get here today. I'm looking forward to seeing you all in California, and I'm looking forward to the work continuing. The reality is that I'm happy to continue to build these relationships with our students and to elevate them because like they deserve that. And I feel like that's one of the biggest rewards of being a school counselor too.
Check out Steve, all the things. Check out this book, and we look forward to the new book. And thank you, Steve, so much.
Thank you both so much.
As always.
As always.
I feel like after talking to Steve, I feel like there's nothing I can't do. I want to do so much after talking to him. He is so inspiring and so like he lights a hope fire in you, doesn't he?
He really does. And his message is so profound, and I think it's so prevalent. And this is the thing that is so interesting. He has one of those talents that he's highly intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
And you have Professor Steve, where you're like,
Yeah.
what? And then he can turn right around and just be hilarious and just be one, like I'm talking to you, dumb. No, that's what it sounded like I was saying. But I mean, he's so humble,
Yeah.
and he just, he's so intelligent. He can talk that talk, but he's just every day. And he's a school counselor. He's still doing this stuff. He's in the trenches, as we say.
I respect that so much because and we mentioned that, but he is doing the work and he's on the front lines. And he's one of my favorites, Kim.
I would leave you for him in 2 seconds. Not even 2, 1 second.
All right. If you haven't already, you can like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Instagram. You can sometimes watch these on YouTube and check with your state school counseling association and see who their keynote speaker is, because it might just be us. We have several keynote presentations lined up for the fall. So check and see if we're coming to a state near you, because we would love to see you.